Hi guys, this is Raghav here from Headphone Zone. Today we're doing one of the most anticipated comparison videos. We're going to be comparing the Moondrop Chu II, a very exciting IEM that almost everyone's talking about, to its own predecessor, the Moondrop Chu I, which was a very important IEM when it released. And I thought that this is going to be super helpful to everyone who has a Chu I and everyone who's looking at the Chu II. If you've been browsing the internet, looking at YouTube videos, almost everyone's been unboxing the Chu II. Everyone's been talking about the Chu II, and early impressions have been galore from everybody. So there's a lot of hype around it, and it's for good reason. One of the reasons why there's a lot of hype around it because the Chu II has a very high legacy to live up to. The Moondrop Chu I, when it released, was easily one of the most important IEMs to have come out in the entry-level space. It really changed the game as far as entry-level IEMs are concerned. Moondrop as a brand, of course, has been giving out smash hit after smash hit, IEM after IEM. And when they created the entry-level Moondrop Chu, the first edition, of course, it was a very important IEM as far as trends go. It was the first IEM that really changed the tuning that all the entry-level IEMs were going for. While everybody was going for a slightly V-shaped or a bass-exaggerated sound signature, the Moondrop Chu I went for a very neutral sound signature, something that wasn't heard of at the 2,000 rupee price point that the Chu I came out at. It was completely unlike anything else we had seen, and it really proved the idea that a lot of people like to believe, that you don't have to pay a lot of money for good tuning. The Moondrop Chu I, when it released, exemplified that. A lot of people heard it and was surprised with the fact that you got a very neutral sound signature. And a lot of people loved the IEM for that. Almost all the audiophiles that were enthusiasts in the space looking at the entry-level IEMs bought the Moondrop Chu I and loved it. But Moondrop didn't sit on its laurels. A lot of people gave us a lot of feedback on the things that could have been better on the Moondrop Chu I, and the Chu II seems to be almost everything that everyone wanted, packed into a beautiful end result that is the Moondrop Chu II. So of course it's got a lot of hype around it. A lot of people are very excited about the Moondrop Chu II. I'm not going to get into a detailed review of the Chu II today. I'm going to try and give you just the comparison points with the Moondrop Chu I so that you have offhand a very clear idea of what the differences and similarities are. The first and the biggest difference between the Chu I and the Chu II is the tuning itself. Now this one's a big one, guys. You don't touch the tuning of the Moondrop Chu I. That's almost sacrosanct, right? That's what made it the great IEM that it is. But the Chu II has taken everything we loved about it and just fixed some of the things that we didn't like about it. A lot of people who would listen to the Chu II, especially for extended periods of time, would acknowledge the fact that it is a very neutral IEM. It can at times sound shouty, or that there wasn't enough bass just to make the IEM feel full, especially if you're listening to music that just needs that little extra punch, that needs that extra depth. So the Moondrop Chu II, while of course still being a very neutral IEM, now has a little bit more bass that's been added in there, and the mid-range just kind of feels less shouty because of the fact that the bass is there. I tried to listen to both of them, and I don't think that they've kind of rolled off the treble or taken away any of the wonderful details, sparkliness that just makes the IEM sound so lively. But adding that little bit of bass down there just makes it a little bit more balanced in my opinion, and a lot of people now describe this as less shouty as compared to the Moondrop Chu I. If you're someone who, got the Moondrop Chu I but just found it a little too harsh to listen to, but you still love the details that were in there, I think that adding that little bit of bass just makes it a little bit more even Steven, much easier to listen to, especially for long periods. I think now the sound signature of the Moondrop Chu II is much closer to a whole bunch of other guys in the same segment, like the Truthier Hola, which we absolutely love, and the Salnote Zero, which is also very, very popular. So it's closer to that segment, which is, I think, feedback that Moondrop would have heard from a lot of users and changed the tuning of the Chu II. I think it's an absolute winner, but I know there will be some people who still prefer that very, very neutral, forward-sounding tuning, for which, if you've got the Chu one, good for you, lucky you. And for almost everybody else, I think you will have a preference for the Chu II. Other smaller improvements with the Moondrop Chu II, the most notable of which is now you do not have fixed cables, you have detachable cables, which I think is becoming a little bit of a norm at the 2,000 rupee price points. Almost all the other IEMs have detachable cables. The Moondrop Chu one was the only one with fixed cables. So I like detachable cables for two reasons. One, it allows you to upgrade them to balanced cables, and these use a standard 2-pin connector, so you can swap these out for a large variety of cables which have 2-pin connectors, including balanced ones that give you a 2.5 or a 4.4 mm termination, allowing you to use this along with balanced DACs as well as high-res audio players that have a balanced output. A lot of people were missing that with the earlier Chu one, and I know for a fact that a lot of people would ask me that, hey, why doesn't this have detachable cables? The other reason is why, because these detachable cables themselves feel a lot more durable. They're a lot better. And on the off chance that you end up damaging your cables for whatever reason, it doesn't ruin your entire earphone. You can still just swap out the cables for any other cable out there, and it works just fine. So it makes the overall package, in my opinion, much more long lasting. A good IEM should last you a long, long time. And if the cable goes bad for whatever usage that you have for it, you can still swap it out and use it. The other was a very, very peculiar feedback that a lot of people used to give with the Moondrop Chu one, which was that after using it for a few months, a lot of people would come back and complain about a channel imbalance, that one side is becoming a little louder than the other and the other side is becoming a little softer. And we used to always wonder why that's happening, because it's very unusual for an IEM to develop a channel imbalance for no reason, right? Either you've got a cut in the connection or the cable's gone bad, in which case one side just stops working. You don't have a volume mismatch. But when we would investigate each of these cases where someone had a channel imbalance, one of the things that we realized was that the filter, the mesh that's on the earphone itself that you can see, it used to get wet because of either moisture or people using it in wet weather for whatever reason. And if it would get wet, that filter would, so to say, start developing some kind of a fungus, which sometimes would block the airflow. It sometimes happens with spongy material that if it gets wet, then it's just not as easy for air to flow through it, and because of which you'd almost always find that there would be a little bit of a channel imbalance that used to develop. If it gets wet, the easiest way would be just to be able to open the filter and remove the sponge, but most people wouldn't be able to figure out how to do that. And so a lot of people started having problems with the Moondrop Chu, especially in weather like Bombay, where we have a lot of rains, that people would find this channel imbalance happening. Now, in the Moondrop Chu II, Moondrop has done something very, very beautiful and elegant, which is that they've simply made the filter detachable. You can now screw this out, and now the filters are interchangeable, but more importantly, they're now cleanable. Once you screw the filter out, you can simply take it out and clean it with a brush or with a small little toothpick and screw it back on. And what this means is that even if you're using it with rain happening around you or moisture happening around you, and for whatever reason something gets stuck on the filter, you can always just screw it out and clean it, which I think is a very, very needed improvement to the product design that a lot of other IEMs should also follow, especially for entry-level IEMs. Now, to get something, you got to give up something. the first notable thing that you're giving up with the Moondrop Chu II, I think, is the beautiful spring tips that used to be included along with the Moondrop Chu I. These spring tips were really, really famous when Moondrop released them, and they used to come free of cost with the Moondrop Chu II. Used to be really, really nice and soft and supple, and a lot of people used to like it for the fact that it would fit into your ear almost effortlessly. It's just a certain quality to the spring tips which makes it really, really likable. It's very, very soft to use. But with the Chu II, Moondrop has gone for the more traditional silicon ear tips, which has a really nice hard core, and you'll find that it's also quite durable. It's quite a bit of a thicker material as compared to the spring tips. Now, some people say that, hey, this makes it less appealing, because if they really wanted the spring tips, they would have, preferred the Moondrop Chu I. But in my opinion, these new ear tips not only are more durable, but I also think that they add to that little bit of a bass impact that's in there by having a slightly tighter core to the ear tips. The ear tips do make a little bit of a difference to the sound quality, and in this particular case, I think the ear tips add to the bass. The other thing you're giving up is the inline microphone. The Moondrop Chu I would come along with an inline mic, and the Chu II, for whatever reason, doesn't have the inline mic for you to be able to take calls on the go or adjust volume. But because the cables themselves are detachable, I think it's just a matter of time that Moondrop releases an extra cable that comes along with an inline mic to have a separate variant for the Chu II. Or if not, you can always just get yourself any other cable out there. I know we've got some from Tripoven, which are also listed on our website, which are cables which come with an inline microphone. And as long as it has a 2-pin connector that's compatible with the Moondrop Chu II, you should simply be able to swap it out depending on your usage. So the flexibility that you get with the detachable cables, I think, makes this a problem that can be overcome if you're someone who's particular on having the inline microphone. All right, guys, with that, I think I've covered all the differences and similarities that you should know of between the Moondrop Chu II and the Moondrop Chu I. I personally am a big fan of the Chu II. I think if you're going to consider this as a complete product, in every way, it's an improvement over the Chu I. There's so much thought that's gone behind this. And I love the fact that it's almost coming entirely from user feedback. That the fact that everyone who's used the Chu I loved it and gave Moondrop feedback, and that went into designing the Chu II, I think makes it a very, very important product. For me, I think this probably is now one of the most compelling IEMs at the 2,000 rupee price point. There's a video that is out there that's going to be talking about the Chu II in complete depth, reviewing them. I highly recommend that you watch that. And there is a lot of reason to compare this to the other IEMs at the 2,000 rupee price point, very popular IEMs. So that's another video series altogether coming up soon. Stay tuned and watch that.